Hello everyone, and thank you so much for taking an interest in the Upstream Battle Marine Litter art competition. Today's presentation is to give you a bit more information on what the project involves and what you need to do to participate. So I'd like to introduce you firstly to our litter characters, Pickle, Barry, Fizz and Wido, and they're going to be helping explain a little bit more about what marine litter is and more about the project. So first of all, there's a question here on the slide that is, what is litter? And Wido is asking how you would describe litter. So I'd like you to pause the video just now and have a discussion either with somebody near you or in class about how you would describe litter. So how did you get on? Did you describe where litter came from? Or maybe you described different types of litter, such as our characters on the screen just here. Hopefully you had lots of discussion about those different things about what litter is and where it comes from. So on the next slide, we're going to explain a bit more about that. So just here, you can see a photo that shows the difference between waste and litter. Waste is everything that has been disposed of properly. So it's things that are inside the bin. However, litter is everything that is not being disposed of properly. So it's the litter or the rubbish that's been piled up around the bin or on top. Now, there's a couple of things that are quite interesting in this photo. First of all, is the fact that we're very used to seeing bins that say litter on them. But really, they should be saying waste bins. Now, sometimes you do hear bins being called waste bins, but it's incorrect to say that the litter is the thing that has been disposed of correctly, because actually that is the waste. And you can also see how the litter that's on the outside of the bin is attracting other litter. So unfortunately, people have seen that there's litter outside the bin, and rather than finding another bin that is less full, all they've done is they've just put the litter with all of the others, and it's accumulated, it's collected like this. And Barry the Bottle here is asking if you've seen anything like this, maybe at a park or a beach. Now, some of the litter ends up in the sea, and we call this marine litter. So it's made its way into the sea. But did you know that 80% of marine litter actually comes from land? So all of that litter that's in the sea, and we know of a few that has plastic pollution mainly, we might have heard, actually comes from land. And 80% of it starts on land. So that's why we call it source to sea litter. So it's starting its journey on land and it's ending up in the sea. It's not being cast overboard from ships, but it's the litter that we see on the land in the parks or the beaches that then gets into the sea. And that's our source to sea litter. So what is the impact of source to sea litter? Well, unfortunately, it's harmful to wildlife and habitats, both on the land and in the sea. So you might have seen pictures such as this one. This is an artist's impression, so this isn't a real picture, so that's okay. But unfortunately, marine litter is really harmful to animals and habitats, both in the sea and on land. So animals could get tangled in it if it was bags or anything that had areas where animals could swim into, so they could get tangled. They can also ingest it, they can eat it thinking that it's food, and then that fills up their stomachs and they're not able to eat actual food. But it can also have an impact on other areas, such as it makes our rivers and beaches messy and unclean. Again, we've got a picture on the slide just here of a nice waterway. Maybe it's a river or an estuary where there's some ducks and some green space, but unfortunately there's also litter floating in the water. So you probably wouldn't want to go to a river or a beach that was covered in litter. And if you did go to one, you might not, it might put you off from going back again, wouldn't it? It's also very expensive and difficult to clean up. So we need technology and lots of expensive machinery to stop and also to collect litter that is already in the waterways. Okay, and there's lots of solutions that are around the world at the moment that are trying to think of ways to prevent source to sea litter. But how does it get from the land to the sea? And that's something we're going to have a think about for this source to sea litter aspect. Okay, so on the slide here are some pictures of different ways of how litter could get from the land to the sea. And again, I'd like you to pause the video and have a discussion either in groups or as a class about what these photos you think they represent. So how did you get on? Some of those are a little bit harder, so really well done. We're going to go through the answers just now. So let's have a look. The first one is a tricky one. That's the tide. So you can see that this image shows a beach with a bin that is either overflowing or it's fallen over onto the beach. So the tide might wash in, collect the litter when it's high tide, and then wash it back out to sea again on low tide. What's the next one? The next one is the wind. So you can see that the carrier bag has been blown across this green space by the wind. So hopefully you got that one. The next one's a wee bit tricky. It's a canal. So the clue for this one is this canal boat in the top corner. So this is a canal. So canals are man-made waterways that connect to usually big cities. And there's the drains. So this is a drain on a street or a road, and it's collected the litter, and then the litter can flow down the drain through the waste treatment and usually out into the sewer or into other waterways such as rivers or directly into the sea. And finally, that is a river or a burn. So you can see the litter that was on the side of, on the bank of the river. It could flow down into the river and out to sea. Now, these are just some of the ways. You might have come up with other ways of how litter can get from land into sea. So well done for that. But the idea of these is that the way that the litter travels is called the source to sea pathway. And we'll come on to that later on in the presentation as well. So that brings us on to thinking about why the River Tay is so important. Well, the River Tay is the longest river in Scotland. It's 193 kilometres or 120 miles long, flowing all the way from the mountains in Ben Louis through Loch Tay and down into the North Sea. So it passes through lots of areas on its way down. So rivers join, tributaries join the river at different points, meaning that there's more water getting into the river. And it also passes through lots of towns and villages. So you're probably in one of these towns or villages or cities just now. So that could mean that as it has such a big area that it covers and passes through so many big towns and cities, that it could have a lot of litter ending up in the river, which then means it ends up in the sea. So what do we need to do about this source to sea litter problem? Well, we must stop the journey of litter and prevent it entering the sea in the first place by tackling the problem at source, or where it starts. And there's lots of ways in which you can do that. Just by taking an interest in this project is one of the ways. So by education and understanding, so young people just like yourselves can educate and understand what we mean by source to sea litter and what impact it has on our planet. you can then use that information to tell other people and inform them. Just like with all of our climate action, raising awareness and telling people is super important. We can also gather information. So gathering information or data on what type of litter we're finding can help inform us change the laws or help to tell policymakers such as the government about what needs to be done on a national scale or even a global scale to address the problem. You can take action locally, such as by doing a litter pick. You can take action as part of your community, and you can raise awareness by being involved in campaigns such as Upstream Battle and telling other people about what you're doing. So we can use promotion and campaign messages to raise awareness. And one of the ways that we can do that is with the Marine Litter Art Competition, which hopefully you guys are interested in taking part in, and that's why you're watching this video. So I'm going to tell you a bit more now about what is involved in the Marine Litter Art Competition and what you need to do for it. So the first thing you need to do is to complete a litter investigation. So we just discussed there about gathering information and gathering data on litter. So what I'd like you to do is to investigate how much litter is in and around the school or the local area. And you can do that by completing an Upstream Battle litter survey. So you can use survey sheets from the Keep Scotland Beautiful website. And then you can upload the results of your litter survey onto an online portal that will then help inform us and therefore be able to tell other people about what changes can be made. So by completing an investigation, you can have a think and maybe answer some questions that will help you with the rest of the project. So you could look at what the sources are around the school and what items you found and where they come from. You could also create a map of your school grounds or local area to identify the sources. So I've created a map just here, just of a pretend school, and it shows what the sources and what are the issues of the litter could be. So for example, I've shown that by the picnic benches just here, there's a drain, and therefore litter can get washed straight from the picnic benches into the drain. And just the same over on this side of the picture, I've said that the fence has got gaps in it. So litter could get blown straight through the gaps in the fence and into this burn or stream running down the side of the school grounds. So you could make a map of your own school grounds to identify the sources of litter. And you can use photos to help explain your findings. The next activity is to research the source to sea pathway. Now, we talked about the source to sea pathway earlier on, and that's how litter gets from land to the sea. So once again, I've used a map here to take a photo of Dundee in this case, and to have a look at what the source to sea pathway of litter could be. So I've identified and labelled different areas where the litter could travel from land to sea. So I've labelled, for example, the River Tay, and I've labelled where the North Sea is at the estuary after the Tay Bridge. And then I've labelled the ways in which the litter could get from land into the sea. The other way to do it would be to create a flowchart. So you could say you would start with your school and you would finish with the sea, or you could start with another source, such as a local park, and you would identify what the source to sea pathway is from that place. The next activity is to make a pledge. So you would pledge one action to carry out as individuals, as a school, and at home to help reduce marine litter. So you have a think about each of these different individual, school or home actions that you could take. So again, just a few examples on the board. So you could think as an individual, you could start, if you don't already, start using a reusable water bottle rather than a single-use water bottle. You could do more recycling or think about how you could improve recycling. At school, you could hold a class or an assembly on what you could do, and you could raise awareness by telling other people about actions and they could take. At home, you could again tell people at home about what you've learned about source to sea litter and see if they can make their change their attitude. You could maybe think about how to reduce packaging on your food by making more things in your lunch, or by reducing the amount of packaging that's in your lunchbox. So there's lots of interesting actions that you could take, and that is what this part of the project is, to make a pledge about what you can take, what actions you can take. And then finally, with all that information that you've learned, it's time to create your artwork, your masterpiece. So as a class, you'd create a piece of art that shows the problem of marine litter, or that explains how you will solve it. So your artwork can take any form that you wish. It could be a model, it could be a sculpture, it could be photographs, a video, stories, or poetry. The more creative, the better, whatever you feel like. However, it must meet the design criteria themes. So there's 3 main themes that your design, your artwork must meet. And they are waste reduction, reusing and recycling, and the message and the story. So for waste reduction, it's really important that we think about what we're using to create our artwork, and we don't make any more litter because of this project. So your artwork must repurpose materials you've already had, such as paper, plastic, and tins. And you can't buy anything especially to make your project, because that goes against the idea of waste reduction. And you could use the litter that you've collected as part of your litter survey, but only if it's making sure that it's absolutely clean and it's safe to use. And there's lots of information for your teachers about this part of the project, of actually making your artwork. So if you have any questions, they'll be able to help with that. The next part is about reusing and recycling. So the materials you use to create your artwork must be able to be recycled or reused afterwards. Okay, so if it's a physical sculpture or model, it must be constructed using recyclable materials. So that means that you might have to think about what you use to make your model. So for example, using plastic-based sellotape is not a good idea, because plastic is damaging, and it's one of the most common things we see in source to sea litter, lots of plastic materials. So using plastic sellotape is probably not the best idea in order to make your model, because it goes against this idea of what you're trying to tell people about reducing. And this is a tricky one, because glue is also got lots of plastic in it. So you might have to think of a different way that doesn't use glue if you make a physical model. Now, the good news is there's lots of ways that you can use more sustainable or eco-friendly materials, such as you can make your own glue, and you could use masking tape, which is paper rather than sellotape, so that you could recycle it afterwards. Now, hopefully, you will be able to display your artwork in school somewhere, so you won't need to get rid of it or recycle it for quite a while, but eventually, unfortunately, we will have to dispose of it. So therefore, this part is where we think about how it is going to be used afterwards. And it must be able to stand up or be transported on its own. Again, if it's a physical model, then that's why. If you make a video or you write a story or poetry, then obviously these things don't apply, but you still might want to bring in some of them. For example, you could write your story or your poem on some recycled paper, or even make your own paper. And finally, just about that is the message and the story. So your artwork must show a message or tell the story about source to sea marine litter in a fun, creative and artistic way. It also has to be understood by a range of audiences. Now, it'd be great to use the information that you've gathered to support your message. So the idea of the previous activities, investigating the issue, mapping the source to sea pathway and making your pledge, will then inform your design for your artwork. So it'd be great if you used all that information in your final art piece. So finally, a brief recap of the activities you're doing for the project. Okay, firstly, you're investigating litter in your school and local area. Then you're mapping the source to sea pathway of how litter travels from land to sea. You're then pledging your actions to stop marine litter entering the River Tay. And finally, you're creating your artwork masterpiece to show and represent everything that you have found. So you've got until the 8th of March until to complete this project. And after the deadline, there will be an exhibition where you can bring your art piece and display it to other people. So thank you so much for helping to reduce marine litter on the River Tay. We can't wait to see all of your amazing artwork. Teachers, there's more information in the guidance sheet, and also there's some links there for any information. So a brief recap of your activities for the project. Firstly, you've got to investigate litter in your school and local area. Then you've got to map the source to sea pathway. Then pledge your actions to help stop marine litter entering the River Tay. And finally, create your artwork masterpiece with all of that information that you've gathered to inform your design. Now, the competition closes on the 8th of March, so you've got a few weeks to complete the project, and it will fit around your normal schedule, and your teachers will be able to tell you when you'll be able to take part in the project. So thank you so much for helping to reduce marine litter on the River Tay. We can't wait to see all of your amazing artwork.